What's up, guys? Welcome to Annex Training's Annex Lab Talk. Today we are talking the FAQs on all things food, getting your questions answered. Now, these are the questions that I most often hear when it comes to nutrition. First and foremost, cheat days. If you watched our previous seminar on cheat meals, you'll have a better understanding of how, when, and why to take these cheat meals. The main question I get is, should I stay under calories or should I get in protein? Which one is most important? Now, I always say this in regards to nutrition. At any point in time, the most important task, especially when you guys are adding in strength training, is getting in your protein. First and foremost, protein is number one. Second, my second rule of thumb, anytime you guys are going to plan on take a cheat day or a happy day, whatever we call it, I need you to stay within 150% of your daily caloric allotment. This is going to hold you accountable to something. That'll make sure that this is not a free-for-all. You have to earn it. We talk about super compensation mode, making sure that your body's levels have hit a point where you now earned your refeed day. You now earned that cheat day. This is not every Saturday I eat whatever I want. This is you earning it. So don't base it on weekly rituals with your friends, your family, date night, whatever it may be. Spread it out more. And if we can't spread it out, if we don't know those biofeedback metrics of what our body is telling us when we should be getting these cheat meals in, then we can make it every 10 days or every 12 days. Something to really hold you more accountable rather than keeping it a ritualistic basis. Now, one of the most frequently asked questions that I get is all about meal timing. When should I eat before a workout? What should I eat after a workout? All of these things are extremely important, especially when you guys are getting in such intense workouts within the gym. So what should I eat prior to a workout? Now, during a workout, this is the point of the day where your body is going to be getting as much blood flow as possible. It's going to save very little blood flow and very little calories for digesting food. So we have to make sure that you're not eating something that's too heavy, that's just going to sit in your stomach. We typically say 2 hours prior to working out should be when you're getting your food in, if possible. Protein and a fast-absorbing carb or fat and a fat-absorbing carb are the best things to eat before a workout. Some good examples would be Greek yogurt or cottage cheese added with fruit, some nut butter and fruit, rice cake with hummus or nut butter, whatever you can decide, as long as it's that fast-acting carb and then either fat or protein, not a combination of both. If you're going to eat less than 30 minutes before the workout, so if you only have time to eat as you are driving to the gym, we just say have a fast-acting carb. So banana, rice cake, small smoothie, something that your body's going to be able to burn through relatively quickly and not spend as much time digesting. What should I eat after I work out? So this is your anabolic phase, 1 or 2 hours after you're done working out. This is when your body is going to start recovering and rebuilding muscle mass. If your body doesn't have significant nutrients inside of it, this phase could actually start to decrease muscle mass as it becomes catabolic without proper nutrition. Usually what we have you eat is a combination of carbs, fast or slow acting carbs, and protein. Almost all the carbs that you eat during this 2-hour time frame is going to be oxidized for fuel and sent directly into your muscle and liver for glycogen resynthesis and also for fat metabolizing. So if you can get that carb in, it's going to help you burn fat and gain muscle. Usually, if you're really paying attention to the timing of the day, we say to save most of your carbs for this 1 to 2 hour time frame. Smart snacks. I get this a lot. As soon as you start following a meal plan consistently, you start getting hungry. So people say that they feel more hungry in between their meals and their snacks. So I've eaten all my food on my meal plan. I'm still hungry. What should I do? Some of my tips and tricks for this: spread out your meals and your snacks further apart. So have your meal and wait until you actually are feeling hungry to have your snack. All too often, people don't wait long enough after a meal. They're not actually feeling hungry. They think they're hungry, so then they down their snack more as a dessert rather than keeping it a snack. I usually tell people to, in this instance, to break your meals into 2 smaller meals. So have breakfast number 1, half of what you are allotted on your meal plan, and then have breakfast number 2 of what is remaining. Then you can do that with your snacks as well if the snack is large enough. If you're still feeling hungry, chew a piece of gum. drink some soda water or some carbonated beverage that will actually help you feel a little bit more full. Have some tea with lemon. Make sure that you're drinking enough water in between your meals as well, as that will help curb your hunger. Eat raw foods. It takes your body twice the amount of energy to digest a raw piece of broccoli compared to a piece of cooked broccoli. And then also, if you are going to have a snack that's not in your plan, snack on protein. That's going to keep you fuller for a longer period of time. Calories in versus calories out. I hear this all the time. People say, well, I worked out, my Apple Watch told me that I burned 500 calories, so that means I get to add 500 calories into my diet. That's not necessarily true. Our bodies don't work that way. We have to understand where our calories are being burnt and how they are allocated. So first and foremost is something called the BMR, or our basal metabolic rate. This accounts for 60 to 70% of the calories that we eat. That's things just by living, pumping blood, making sure that you're getting blood flow to all of your organs. Those are going to happen regardless if you get up and you're active throughout the day or if you just stay sitting down. The next one is something we call NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So this is things like moving your hands while you're talking, twiddling your thumbs, tapping your foot, the things that you do on a normal daily basis that aren't counted within exercising. That accounts for 30% of the daily calories that you are eating. EAT, this is exercise activity thermogenesis. So these are the calories that you spend during your 1 hour out of 24 hours, just remind yourself of that, when you are burning calories. We see that through your BMR and your NEAT, those things combined are way higher in caloric allotment than just your exercise. TEF, or your thermodynamic effect on food, how your body burns calories just simply by digesting the foods that we are giving it on a daily basis. So let's just take this hypothetical person. They strength train 3 times a week for an hour at a time. That's somewhere between 600 and 900 calories burned just through their EAT, or their energy or their exercise activity thermogenesis. Now, to lose 1 pound of fat per week for this person, he or she would need to burn 3,500 calories. So the hypothetical person that we're talking about is still off by somewhere around 2,500 to 2,900 calories if we're just thinking about exercise calories. So we would have to actually bump up his training sessions or her training sessions to somewhere around 10 to 15 sessions per week in order to lose 1 pound. And that's not all. They would also have to increase the intensity of the workout to elicit enough of a metabolic response to burn sufficient enough calories during their workouts, 10 to 15 per week, in order to lose 1 pound. So you can see that all of the calories that we are eating, all of that energy gets expended a lot differently. We can't just say, because we burn this 500 calories during our workout, I now get to eat 500 more calories, because our bodies don't work like that. But can I just run more? So can I just do a little bit more cardio? Because running burns a lot of calories, doesn't it? Not necessarily true. So when we start being more cardio efficient, our metabolism becomes actually over efficient. So when we're burning a lot of calories, let's just take a marathon runner for instance, this is why they don't just simply disappear. They could be burning somewhere around 14,000 calories per marathon. They're not going to just shrink up and shrivel up and disappear. Their metabolism actually becomes too efficient to start putting on muscle mass and burning enough fat. When we're burning all of these calories, the body actually adapts because of the repetitive nature of cardio work. It burns fewer calories for the same amount of work being done. Less muscle, less calories burned, lower metabolism. All of these things can open itself up to obesity, diabetes, and other harmful diseases as well. Now, when we add cardio in, we see these gains appear fairly quickly, but they are the fastest to disappear. Adding in strength training, adding in building muscle mass is actually going to make your metabolism start revving up a little bit more efficiently. It's also going to ensure that after your workouts, your body continues to burn calories throughout the day, just trying to repair muscle mass, trying to allocate glycogen and leptin a little bit more efficiently throughout the body. So this is what I usually say when we're talking about calories in versus calories out. With us adding in cardio, we see these initial results. We're on a diet, we see these initial results, and then all of a sudden it drops off. And this becomes the suck point. This becomes where it's very, very tough to continue to burn fat and put on muscle mass. This is where the work must be done. That flat part of the curve, this is hard for people because it takes a lot of time to put on lean muscle mass while continuing to burn fat as well. Stick with it because almost always people will give up at this point. But once you've stayed on this good path for a long enough period of time, that's where progress happens. And that's where we see not the initial results, but the results that you earned. What if I run out of time at the end of the day and I still have food left? What should I do? Well, first and foremost, you need to plan better. Make sure that when you get up, you're not waiting so long to have your first meal. Eat within an hour or 2 hours of waking up, and you can even have a snack if you don't like having a large breakfast. Try to fit your snacks in with your meals. All too often, I have people who work shift jobs who don't have time to take these snack breaks. Take those snacks and add them into the meals. Make sure that this is your priority. So first, eat your protein. Next, make sure that you eat your carbs. Third, make sure that you eat your fat. So if you do have food left over, first get in those protein goals so you know that you got your protein in, and then we can think about those other macronutrients afterwards. We get to the point of after following a meal plan for a certain period of time, we get bored with it. So then we begin swapping foods out. Now, if we're just simply taking a food, swapping it out, taking another food, swapping it out, the more that we do that, the further it gets us away from how that meal plan was initially put together in the first place. I also have people who will follow meal plans and they'll say, well, I'm just going to count macros instead because it's easier and I get to eat what I want. That's the main point. You get to eat what you want. Usually, people will start on this meal plan process because they are not happy with where they are currently at. If you go back to eating what you want to eat, you'll get back to that point a lot faster. We have to remember, a calorie is not just a calorie. So if you're filling your cottage cheese calories with ice cream, eventually those extra fat calories from the ice cream are going to catch up to you, even if the calorie allotment is the same between those two items. We also have to make sure that when we're swapping out cottage cheese and ice cream, the vitamins, the minerals, the fiber, all that are included in cottage cheese are not necessarily included in ice cream. So all of those little things that we don't necessarily think about when swapping foods out, those come into fruition a lot faster the more often that we do it. Now, one of the most frequently brought up topics when it comes to nutrition is intermittent fasting. Is it good for me? Is it bad for me? There's nothing inherently wrong with intermittent fasting. There's some pros to it. There's some cons to it. A lot of times it's not implemented properly, and that's where things can become dangerous. So the premise of intermittent fasting, what is it? There's specific windows throughout the day where you're allowed to eat and where you are not allowed to eat. Sometimes this works best for people's schedule, or if they have a hard time kind of figuring out when they should be eating, when they shouldn't be eating, intermittent fasting could be a really good way to make that decision a little bit more automatic. The benefits of this, so limiting the frequency of your meals. So if I'm only able to eat 8 hours in the day, now I don't have to eat as often. I can make my meals a little bit larger, and I don't have to have specific breaks in the day to get my food in. Another benefit of intermittent fasting, you really can do this with any nutrition ratio. So any amount of proteins, carbs, fat, you're just allowed to eat in a specific window of that day. It won't cannibalize your muscles because you are eating through specific windows. You're getting in your food for the day during that window as well. It can help in fat loss, since if you are a snacker and you typically just graze throughout the day, if you're not allowed to eat during specific times, that will kind of stop you from eating. It's more convenient for people, and it is pretty simplistic in nature where you don't have to be measuring your food. It's not super complicated. Some of the cons. People believe that they can eat literally whatever they want during that eating window. So they say as long as I stick to my eating window, I can have my pizzas and my beer, when that's not necessarily true. Another thing with intermittent fasting, your body has to get used to when you're getting food in, when you can actually break down that food and digest it and use it for energy. So typically during the first process of intermittent fasting, 1 or 2 months, you're going to find that you're going to actually gain weight, which can be defeating for some people if they're looking to do this more as a diet rather than kind of a lifestyle. Without being able to eat after a certain point of the night, you'll actually have a really hard time building new muscle. Another con when you're intermittent fasting, your natural adrenaline levels will decrease, and it'll also elevate your cortisol levels, which can be a dangerous thing when you're looking to lose body fat. I thought this next topic was really interesting because all too often as women, we kind of put aside our menstruation and just say, well, it's the way it is. There's nothing I can do about it. When it comes to nutrition, we can actually do a lot that will help support some of the things that we feel during this time. So just talking through the menstruation cycle for women. So typically days 1 through 14 is something called your follicular phase. When we take nutrition into consideration at this, your insulin sensitivity during this time is at its highest, which typically means that you're going to utilize glycogen or eating carbs a lot better than any other time during your menstruation cycle. It's a good idea during this time to keep those carbs relatively high so you can actually utilize them for building more muscle, to increasing testosterone as well. Reducing your fat intake during this time will also help. If we are raising up carbohydrates, you actually have to pull back on fat to ensure that your calorie level doesn't bypass what you are typically supposed to eat during the day. We can keep the protein level consistent during this time as well. Day 14, this is the ovulation portion of your cycle. This is usually when we're really hungry. We typically start craving sugar and other carbs during this time as well. We'll have a slight increase in metabolic rate. Our heart rate will be a little bit higher at this period of time as well. So we just have to make sure that we're consuming enough protein to help with satiety, to really curb off those cravings that you may be getting during this time. Keep a balance of your carbs and your fat intake as well on your ovulation day. 15 through 28, so obviously give or take a little bit in terms of the daily cycle, this is your luteal phase. So this is when you're going to feel tired, irritable, your PMS symptoms that you're typically going to feel. And this is when we really get extreme sugar cravings. We're not able to focus as much mentally or put as much effort in physically as well. During this time, I highly suggest reducing your carb intake just a little bit to continue with fat loss. Now, all too often, I think we don't give ourselves enough credit during this time, especially as women. Our period is something that we have to deal with, but just know that you're not crazy for having these feelings. Your body is actually releasing tissue. It takes more energy during this time as well. Our hormones spike like crazy. It takes a lot of energy from our body to be able to do this every single month. If you are feeling extra irritable, cranky, tired, all of those things, you can go ahead and add in 150 to 300 daily calories with the right food. So taking a look back at that screen, if we keep days 1 through 14, we can increase carbs and decrease fat. Day 14, we can increase the amount of protein that we have. And days 15 through 28, we can actually reduce the carb intake just to make sure that we are going to continually reach our goals. So as long as we're filling those days with the right amount of calories, if we need any excess food, you'll be good to go. Eating 2 hours before bed. This has been around since I was 10. You shouldn't eat 2 hours before bed, but our body doesn't know what time it is. And if you think about the human structure as it is, physiologically, the body doesn't shut off completely at any point in time. So yes, when we're resting at night, we're not eating, but we are working to digest our food. We're working to pump blood. We're working to even recover and repair muscle. One of the things that you should take care of is if you're eating late at night, if that sends you into a surplus, it could be bad. But otherwise, if you're following a meal plan and you're eating right before you go to bed, as long as you're getting in the amount of calories in the right way that you're supposed to be getting them in, it really doesn't matter how close to bedtime you're eating. Your stomach doesn't know what time it is. Your body doesn't know what time it is. Your body actually does a better job digesting food food when we are sleeping because it has a little bit more intestinal mobility while we are at rest. We also have to remember that our basal metabolic rate, that BMR, it's essentially the same as when we are sleeping as when we're awake. And that accounts for 60 to 70% of the calories that we use in a day. So as long as we're still burning the same amount that we are during the day, we'll be fine. Sugar and glucose. So what's bad for me? What's good for me? Can I have fruit? Can I not have fruit? All of this comes into play when we talk about sugar. All carbs are essentially sugar. It's broken down into 3 different molecules: glucose, fructose, and galactose. The only difference is some carbs are more easily digested, while others, like fiber, are a little bit more resistant to digestion. If it's harder to digest, it's going to take a lot more calories to actually break down that food. Fructose is metabolized almost solely by the liver. So anytime that we're eating fruit, the liver is taking on most of the metabolization. Glucose, on the other hand, is actually dumped directly into the bloodstream and then transported directly to all different tissue. So if we're getting glucose in, just your normal table sugar, it actually gets dumped right into the bloodstream and then transported all across other tissue to utilize for energy. About 41% of fructose is also converted into glucose within 3 to 6 hours. So that's why it's not necessarily a bad habit to get into when you snack on fruit. A lot of people think sugar, but it actually isn't. The rest of the fructose is oxidized, converted into lactate, and then converted into glycogen, which is then stored within the muscle, again, for energy. So that's more than 50%. Little do we know, sugar actually stimulates the brain's reward center, much like cocaine, alcohol, and heroin does. It makes us happy, but it also makes us addicted. Plain sugar lacks complexity. So if we take a look at plain sugar and then the sugar that's found in a potato, you're going to find that plain sugar actually only has 2 molecules. It doesn't have any fiber, water, proteins, minerals, anything like that. The potato is a lot more complex. It has more molecules and it's more complex in vitamins and minerals. Now, with the more complicated and complex carbohydrate, it's harder to eat a lot of those because it has so much in it. With simple sugar, it's a lot easier to eat a ton of it because it is just that. It's simple. Now, eating this simple sugar, it also elicits a much faster insulin response. And if that's done repetitively and consistently enough, it can be very inflammatory to the rest of the body. Sugar versus carbs. So just like I said, simple sugar, complex sugar. When we ingest sugar, our body actually releases hormones to regulate it. This is where high blood pressure comes from, and an insulin spike as well. Because our body is so busy regulating our bones, muscles, they have to take a back seat to get rid of this sugar before we actually start doing anything else, like digesting food. It slows down our neural communication and also can impair our mood and our memory. Because of the inflammatory nature of sugar, it stiffens collagen in our tendons, our joints, our skin. It causes arthritis and wrinkling as well. Sugar intake affects the nerves and adrenaline levels, leading to hormone fluctuations that are so irritating, it actually can cause the brain pain, which is where headaches come from. But not only is it headaches, it also can actually happen with anxiety, heart palpitations, joint problems, chronic pain, eczema, all of these other signs that come from a high level of inflammation in the body can just be broken down into your sugar intake. When we eat fiber alongside sugar, or we're getting enough fiber in our diet with simple sugar, the insulin response that just a plain sugar would have is actually muted by the body because of this fiber intake. So if you're putting sugar on top of oatmeal, or even like a maple syrup glazed salmon, it doesn't actually trigger the same response from our body as it would if you're just having maple syrup, or if you're just having plain sugar. Many words get thrown around quite often in the gym. I don't want to get bulky. I want to be toned. I want to be lean, strong, not skinny fat. All of these things that people have an image in their mind of what that entails. So I'm just going to break down the oversimplification of these terms and just kind of talk about what each of them mean and how we can achieve each of them. Bulky. Usually when people say I don't want to get bulky, that means that they don't want to get overly muscular. They don't want to be a massive bodybuilder. This is a lot harder to achieve than you actually think. Bulky is when you build muscle and then you're also building fat at the same time. So we're not eating properly as we're building a more muscular frame. When we just simply build muscle and we're eating a good nutrient-filled diet that's also focusing on fat loss, you're not going to get extremely bulky. Now, not many people understand how hard this actually is to achieve. You must eat in a calorie surplus, you must strength train enough to elicit massive changes within the body, and that will get you that more bulky appearance. Now, that's not just putting on lean muscle mass. This is talking about getting muscular as quickly as possible. So that's a combination of fat and muscle at the same time. If you think of most powerlifters, bodybuilders, strongmen, those people would be thought of as bulky, not necessarily lean and toned, but more of a larger look. That takes a lot of training to actually achieve and elicit those changes within the body. Toned, this is more of the type of look that most people are thinking about when they think about fitness models, or people that just have a generally muscular figure without being too big. What most people don't understand is that we are toned. As long as we are doing strength training and you're pushing progressive adaptations within inside the body, you have muscle underneath fat. So we are toned. It's just the softer areas in our body have a little bit more fat than other areas. The misconception with the toned look is that you lift lightweight many times to achieve this look. That's not necessarily true. If you're lifting lightweight, it doesn't elicit enough changes within inside the body to have a more toned and muscular looking physique. We actually have to push relatively hard to elicit shape. Then we also have to include nutrition on top of that. If nutrition is taken into consideration with a good strength training method, then you'll start to see that toned, lean look. The other word that gets thrown around a lot is skinny fat. Now, this is what you see most often when people don't do strength training. So when they're gifted genetically, or if they just simply participate in only cardiovascular activities. This is when you look fit, but actually not having any muscle on your body. Every client that I begin working with in regards to nutrition and fitness always asks if they should start to take away more calories on the days that they have more intense workouts. Because intensity is so unique to each individual, it's not necessarily an easy thing to say yes or no to, because we could think the workout was very intense in regards to got our heart rate up, in regards to we're super sore the next day, so it really worked our muscle. Those are all different biometric feedback systems that display intensity in a different way. So what I say is all trackers of this are essentially skewed. Now we think of intensity in regards to percentages. Now let's think 80% of your back squat when you first started working out. The more often that you move that 80%, the less intensity and the less energy it actually will take to move that same weight 6 months from now. This is why we get stronger when we're following progressive overload. As we're lifting that weight more often, we touch that weight more often, so it becomes easier for our body to move that weight. So we can't necessarily say anytime you're lifting more than 80%, you can eat more, because that's not necessarily true. This all really depends on your goal. If you want specific results, you need specific programming to elicit the results that you're looking for. So if you want an intense workout, you need a specific program to elicit intensity in your workouts, not somebody next to you working out. The last question that came up most recently was about gummy worms. I saw my favorite bodybuilder eating gummy worms during his workout. Does that mean I should do this too? Make sure that I'm getting strong like this person? Definitely not true. My answer to that is just simply no. There's 24-hour period in the day. Many of us forget this fact. 95% of your day, if you are working out for 1 hour, is spent resting. If you are only putting in 1 hour of intentional exercise, you do not need gummy worms during your workout to make sure that your muscle is getting fast-acting carbs into it. You don't have to worry about this. Worry about getting in the foods that your body needs, not necessarily an intra-workout snack when you're only working out for an hour a day. Hopefully this seminar answered some of those questions burning in the back of your mind in regards to fitness and nutrition. We'll see you on the next seminar.